demo, I'm going to show you how to create a cloud-based expenses app without writing any code. What you will see is the Oracle Visual Builder Studio, or VBCS, and how it can be used to create fully functional applications. So just as a quick introduction, VBCS is a low-code development platform, and it lets you build web and mobile applications quickly. It's great to use if you are an Oracle professional or a student or even a business user, and it's useful if you want to create powerful apps without any coding skills. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a similar app that has already been created in Oracle, and what we're going to do is copy the look and feel of that app. So first of all, I'm going to navigate to the Me tab and choose Journeys. So we can see that this page has been created using the new Oracle Redwood theme, and this allows the page to be very responsive depending on the type of device you are using. So whether you are using a laptop, a tablet or even a mobile, the information that's displayed in the screen will respond to that particular device. So this page contains the look and feel that I want to create in my app. So we can see at the top of the page we have a search box, and then we have a filter so that we can help to improve or restrict the search. And then in the middle section of the page we can see a list of records. So I will be using Visual Builder Studio to replicate this look and feel, but for expense information. So to access Visual Builder Studio, I'm going to navigate over to the Home button. And then from the Home page, I will click on the Navigation menu and then scroll down to Configuration and Expand, and then choose Visual Builder. And then Visual Builder Studio will open in a new tab. And the first screen you will see will contain the list of projects. Now it's important to understand that there is a framework for creating new projects in Visual Builder Studio. So as part of the change management process, it's important to make sure that if you are creating a new project, you have reviewed any existing projects first, just to make sure that you are not overriding any existing projects which may contain similar features to what you are creating, and also make sure that you are not impacting anybody else's work and that what you are doing is a unique project. So we can see a list of existing projects here, and I have reviewed all of these projects to make sure they are not using the same tables or the same information as the one that I plan to create. And we can also see that each project has a status as well as a last updated date. And we can also see the members who are part of those projects as either project owners or project contributors. And we can also see the size of those projects as well. So I'm going to click on Create. And I'm just going to enter some information about my project. So let's call this Extend Expenses. And for the security, Private has been automatically selected. And I want to click on Shared because I want to make this project available to everyone within the organization. And then click on Next. And then just ensure that the empty project option is chosen and then click on Next. Project properties we will leave to mark down, and the project owner is the user that I have logged in as in order to create this project. The project is now being provisioned, and this process usually takes a few moments, and we just have to wait for each of these project components to complete. once the project has been created, there are two setups that we need to have in order to build our app. The first is the workspace and the second is the environment. So let's create the environment first. And I'm going to give the environment name as the current instance that we are working in, and then click on Create. And then we need to add an instance. And the instance is going to be one of the Oracle Cloud Application instances. And then we choose the resource from here, and then click on Add. And then once the status has been verified as available, we can now create the workspace. And to create the workspace, we go back to Project Home and then click on Go to Workspaces. And then we click on New and then Application Extension. And then we'll give the extension a name. And then we can see that the development environment has been selected, and we can leave all the other defaults as they are and then click on Create. And we can see that the workspace is now being configured. So the first thing that I need to do is click on the Add App UI and then just give the UI a name and then click on Create. So now we can see that the page builder screen has been loaded with various different options. So what I want to do first is just expand the folder for our application and then click on Main Start. So once the page has been loaded, we can see a few options on the top here. So if we click on the Live option, we can see that the page is now ready to interact with as if it was live. So for example, we can click on the Navigator menu and also click on some of these options here. And this is useful if we want to just have a quick preview of the application as we are building it. And if we want to focus on the design, then we just click on this design option. So the useful thing about the page builder is that we don't have to create the page from scratch. We can actually use a page template by clicking on this option here. And if I scroll down, I'm going to choose the Smart Search page template and then click on Select. Now, if you can remember, we are creating a very similar application to the My Journeys task page. So let's quickly refer back to what that page looks like. So if you look at the design of the page, there is the header as well as the search field. And then we have the list of tasks. So for our expenses application, we want to reflect the same look and feel. So on our page, we can see that there are some search slots. So we want to add a search component to this area here. So I'm going to go to the component filter and just type in the word search, and then just choose this input search option by dragging and dropping the component. And then we can see that the field is now visible. And if we go to the properties area for this component and then click on data, and then from here we can assign a variable. So to add the variable, we go to the value field and then click on this option here called select variable. And then click on create. And then we can give the variable a name, for example, search variable. And then leave the other options as they are and then click on create. Now, the information that we want to see in our application will relate to expenses. So we want to make sure that we can link this input search field to expense data. So to complete that link, we navigate all the way over here to the left and click on the Services option. So to complete that link to the expenses data, we click on the Add Service Connection option. And then we click on Select from Catalog. And then from here, we have the different applications. So you have HCM, you have Sales and Service, and Applications Core. So because we're looking at the ERP tables, we're going to click on this option here. And then once the list has been loaded, we can see there is a very long list of objects that are used throughout the ERP applications. So we can scroll down and search, or the other option is to just use the filter to narrow the search for expenses objects. And then we're going to choose expenses. And then in this service name field, what we want to do is create the expenses service connection and add it to the list of connections. So if I just enter expenses and then click on create. Okay, and that's all that we need to do here. So the next point is to go back to our expenses app that we are building and just wait for the page to load. And then we click on data. And then we can see the services option. So I'm going to expand the option and expand on expenses. And then I'm going to choose this expenses option and then drag and drop that into the data area. And then as soon as the component is dragged into the container, we can see that there are some different layout options, for example, list or table. So we're going to choose the list option. I'm going to choose the Redwood list template and then click on next. So the next step is to build the template fields. So let's start to select the fields that we feel the user will need to view in our list. So the first field will be the merchant. So we can drag and drop that field into primary text. And then the next field to add to the list is the description field. And we're going to add that to the second column. And it would also be useful to understand the receipt information as well. So to search for the receipt information, I enter receipt. And then just scroll down, and then we can see there is the receipt amount, and then we can drag that across into the secondary text field. And then we can put the receipt currency code beside it. And then in the third column, we can enter the receipt date. And that completes the design for the layout. So I can now click on next. So the last part is to add some filters. So I don't want to allow the user to see everything. I want them to be able to filter using criteria. So I select this filter criterion option here. And then if we navigate down here, we can start to define the filter. So if I click on the if option, and I want to make sure that the filter contains information from my variable search. So I'm going to choose the variable from here. And it was the search variable 1. And I can also add another filter by clicking on Add Condition. And from here, I'm going to search for the description. And the variable is going to be the same. And we want to change the matching option to match any, so the user can search by either the merchant name or the description. And then we click on Done. And then click on Finish. And then go back to the application. So the next thing I want to do is change the page name and the description. So to do that, I go right back up to the template. And then for page title, I choose, let's say, my expenses. and the page subtitle is going to be expenses listing. And we can see that this information is now up to date. So now that we have created the new expenses application, we want to make it more dynamic and useful for the expenses user. So we want the user to be able to click on each of the expense records and make a small change to the expense attribute. So to do this, I want to enable the list view. And then on the parameters section, if we click on the events tab and then create an event listener, and I'm going to choose this option on first select item. And then we can see that the action chain screen has now loaded. And this screen uses the drag and drop option in order to build the action chain. And an action chain is just a series of process flows that allow us to complete a specific action for the new application. So for example, we can drag and drop a REST API or some code or some if logic. And if we scroll down, then we have some navigational actions. And I'm going to choose this navigate to page action here. And because I want to navigate to a page, I'm going to choose the create option over here. And then to create the page, I give the page an ID, for example, update page expense. And then scrolling down, we have a series of templates that we can use in order to simplify the page creation. So I'm going to choose this one here, which is the simple create and edit page template, and then choose create. And then once we have created the page, we click on go to page. And this loads the look and feel of the new page that we have just created. And then just like with the first page that we created, we can change the page title and description by clicking on the page template. And then we have the page title here. So let's call this update expenses. And the page title is view and update expense information. Now, because we are working on the expenses object information, we need to specify this under the variables. So if we click on the variables tab and then go to object ID, and I'm going to choose the required option as the input parameter. Now what we need to do is connect the object ID to the expense ID. And to do that, we go back to the main start page. And we go back to the action chain that we were previously working on. So to complete that link, we click on the action chain and then go to the parameters area. And then in this object ID field, we want to select row key. And what this will do is it will allow the user to select the row. And then once they select the row, it will now open the update expenses page. So as you can see, the update expenses page is currently empty. So we need to add some data and some fields in order for the user to complete their updates. So to do that, I'm going to create my own form. And there are two ways that we can enter this data. We can either use the dynamic forms or we can create our own forms from scratch. And to create my own form, I'm going to just click on this dynamic form over here. And then just click on delete and then delete again. So we can see that the dynamic form has now been deleted and we are now able to add our own fields. And then after we expand expenses, I just select this option and drag that into the main slot. And this time I'm going to create an edit form. So if we scroll down and then choose the edit form option. And here we are going to locate any expense fields that we are interested in seeing on our update page. So the first field I'm going to add is the description, and then also the merchant name, and also the receipt amount, and also the receipt currency and the receipt date. And we can use the drag and drop over here in order to just move the fields in a different order. And then once it's organized how we want it, then we click on Next. So what we're doing here is we're using the drag and drop once again in order to make sure that we can update a specific record. So like I said, the object ID is the row key, and we are using this object ID to update the expenses ID. And I'm also going to update this update expense ID here, and then click on Finish. So the last thing that we need to do is activate the Submit button. So once the data has been updated, we want the user to be able to submit and save the information. We click on the template, and then we click on the Events tab, and we are looking for the primary action that we need to take in order to submit the expense. So we're going to just navigate down to this Submit Chain action and then click on Select. And what we want to be able to do is save the expense chain. So we're going to select this option here and then click Select Action Chain. And the last thing that we need to do is submit the expense information. So under the Save Expense Chain action, we have this expense ID field, and then we just click on this Select Variable, and then we choose Object ID to save the expense. And that's it. We have now built the new expenses application, and we can now preview the work that we have done in order to make sure it is working in the way that we expect. So to do that, we click on the Live option, and I'm just going to click on Cancel just to go back to the My Expenses page. And I'm just going to search for, let's click on Live once again, and let's just search for one of the expenses. And then if we click on it, that should take us to the Update Expense page. And now I just want to just make a small change to the expense merchant name and click on Submit. And we now have a confirmation to say that the expense has been saved successfully. So once we have tested the application and made sure that it is functioning the way that we expect it to, then there will need to be some sort of change approval process to make sure that the change is ready and sufficient to be released into the live instance. And we also need to validate the change against any other projects which may be happening at the same time to make sure that we are not overriding any other related changes that could affect another person's project. Now the next step is to publish the new application to Oracle Fusion Apps. Now once the publish has completed, we'll be able to see the app under the Others menu here. So at the moment we can see some applications, but there will be an additional tile for our new app. So to publish the changes, what we need to do is come over to the top of the page and click on Publish. And then click on Publish once again. And then once we click on Publish, if we go back to the Visual Builder Studio main page, and then once you click on the Builds option, we can see that there are some jobs which are now in process, and these are jobs to deploy and publish the package. And under the Pipelines tab, and if we just click on the pipeline and just click on this Layout option, then we can see that the publish is happening in two stages, so we have package and deploy. So the first step is to compile a package of the changes for our new expenses application, and then those changes will be deployed into the Fusion application instance.